Let's give it up for Justin Salas and welcome to the meeting.
Man, it's so cool to be here. I have just recently started speaking in front of larger crowds. I've been speaking in front of some smaller crowds in my other life as a professional climber, but to be able to be here and talk with you all today is so cool, and especially here in my hometown. So I titled this The Almost Limitless Internet for a myriad of different reasons, as we'll get into as we carry on in the talk here, but let me just go ahead and mark my timer here. I'm visually impaired, so I'm using some different tools, some assistive tools to help me navigate. Forgive me. It's already acting up on me. This is what happens when things sometimes aren't so accessible. You try and make everything work as well as you'd like it to, and it fights it sometimes. Here it goes. Thank you, guys. Okay, so let me introduce myself. Like Ian said, my name is Justin Salas. I'm actually a professional athlete in my other life outside of accessibility. So that's what we will be talking about today is digital accessibility. And I've been a professional athlete for about 7 years now, a climber for 10 years. And I never would have imagined that this would be something I would be doing. It's quite interesting. I learned about digital accessibility kind of by sheer happenstance. I grew up with a mom who was a web developer, and she used two different tools, so a Mac and a PC. And I remember I was laying on my Mac one day, and I scrolled in, and everything got huge, and I was like, oh crap, I broke it. I don't know what this is, but I can't zoom back out of this. I have no idea what's going on. I had to use the other computer to Google it, and as it turns out, it was a app that people that got those vision use. I didn't know what to make of it at the time. I just thought, that's really interesting. I'll put it in my back pocket and think that's something cool. Little did I know I would lose my vision a couple of years later. And so I went to the School for the Blind for a short period of time just to learn how to be a blind person, basically. And I had a little vision counselor that basically told me, welcome to vision loss, you're not going to ever be able to do what you want to do in life. Congratulations, figure it out. And I was thinking, who the hell is this man to tell me what I can and can't do with my life? And then I found rock climbing because a friend of mine was saying, well, hey dude, you don't need to see to climb. And I was thinking, that's ridiculous. Of all the things you think you need your eyesight to climb, it's kind of life or death, right? And little did I was pretty hesitant. Little did I know he was right. And with some guidance and some help, I learned to climb, and people told me where handholds and footholds were, so that was really exciting. And then I started making some headlines. I became the first paraclimber in history to climb the grade of the 11, which, if you guys don't know, is just a really difficult climbing grade. 1% of the climbing community has achieved that level. And it's just pretty crazy that I've been able to do that with little to no vision. These pictures here of me competing, I climbed for the U.S. national team, and the center photo is a picture of me winning the World Championships, and the second photo is me taking second place in another World Championship event. These, of course, being representing the paraclimbing community abroad. I've also won the national championship 6 times in a row. So I've always been a champion for digital accessibility because I use it as a native AT user, as a climber. Now I have the opportunity to do it, actually making change in the tech world. So I've also done a lot of amazing stuff outside of competition climbing in the real rock world. The photo, of course, on the left is me here in my hometown in Las Vegas. If anybody here is from Las Vegas, say something that's pretty cool. And of course, on the right side, I really like kind of risking it, so to say, on some what we call highball climbs. So let's get into more of the technical stuff here. So how do we, what is digital accessibility and how does it impact the digital world? So, we can look at digital accessibility similar to how we look at accessibility in the real world. We have all these different modalities that we use, like elevators, escalators, there's braille, there's sidewalk cutouts, and there's bumps so that people that use canes like myself can know where the curb ends. These are really important. And then there's the digital accessibility world. So similar modalities, however, we're going to be using things like screen readers for people with blindness, dyslexia, people who have a hard time tracking on text and stuff like that. And then we have keyboard users. What if you can't use a mouse? What if you get injured at work or something like this? So you start using your keyboard to tab through pages. These are simple things that we do to make things accessible online, both in browsers and mobile apps. And so when did all this start? So in 1989, Tim Berners-Lee created the World Wide Web, and he realized that this was going to be really impactful. So, of course, this is extremely impactful. We're all here because we do a lot of marketing online or in the digital world. And I think, he could foresee that this would turn into our banking, our how we connect with loved ones, our medical resources, all these things that we all do on a regular basis. And so he would found the World Wide Web Consortium. And through the World Wide Web Consortium, we see that there needed to be a set of standards, and those standards are the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG. And what WCAG is a set of building codes, just like we have to build structures and homes here in here in the U.S. Of course, there's different codes more in Europe and so on, but essentially it's a set of standards that we build the web digital platforms like mobile apps and our browser-based stuff so that they function well with these assistive tools. And there's four main principles that we want to follow when we're building these websites and mobile apps, and that's these here. So I won't bore you with the really in-depth stuff here, but the main one being perceivable. So perceivable is about as simple as it sounds. So I'm a low vision person. I like to use what vision I have left, but I also use screen readers and I use them in tandem because I'm trying to retain what I have. So I have no central vision. If you can imagine reverse tunnel vision, my friend calls it donut vision. And I can't see anything out of the middle, and so I have some peripheral, and so if I'm trying to look at because it's just peripheral, you can't read out of your peripheral. So I'm getting really close. In fact, if I wanted to look at this screen here, I'd have to come right up into the front of it. And so perceivable would be, is the web page got good contrast ratios? Can a screen reader see the element on the web page? If you're deaf, is there text overlay or ASL translations? There's a bunch of different things that fall into that category, but that's kind of the fundamental sense. The second one would be operable. And operable is going to be, can it function with a keyboard? Is it going to, again, function with a screen reader? And then what's really interesting is now we have Neuralink. I think it was put into the first human patient a couple of weeks ago. And now this dude like literally has telepathy. He's completely paralyzed from the shoulders down, and he can sit there and you see the cursor flicking around the screen like someone's using a mouse, but he's not doing anything. So now we have to think about how we're going to code websites and mobile apps for things like that, which is very, very interesting. And then we have understandable. So understandable is really important. I'm sure you guys are familiar with websites, airline company websites. When I was booking my flights to do this presentation at the Washington Privacy Conference, I was just bombarded by the confusing nature of this really well-known airline company, and I just could not figure out where I was on the website, what was supposed to be there, and it was not clear. So we want to make sure that we're building websites to be clear and concise and have good landmarks and not crazy colors denoting certain buttons. And then we have robust, the final one. Robust is going to be, essentially, we want things to grow with the internet. So we have new technologies. We want to make sure that the last three work broad spectrum with Apple, Windows, Mac, the iOS, and Android. And so, of course, there's going to be new ones. We want to make sure it works with all of them. And so I have some examples here as well. These are the examples. For me personally, this is a big one. So this is a generic accessibility statement. And you can see it seems like it's decent contrast, but for me, that's really hard to see. On the right side, there's a set of ratios in which we want to follow the web content or W3C setup, and this one unfortunately doesn't pass hardly at all. We can see that it fails on all accounts. And I think what's interesting is it's not necessarily for lack of trying. I think that a lot of the times this is an issue because it looks nice. And it does probably look nice, but I can't see it. And that's a big issue, especially when we get into trying to get click-through and sales and accounts. If something is not perceivable, if someone who's low vision or has a hard time navigating the web space, then they're not going to be able to facilitate, sometimes even getting to the last appointment, clicking check out. And so this one is operable. And LeadsCon, you have to forgive me, I was just looking for an example in which to show everybody how something that's not accessible works. And we're all familiar with the LeadsCon website. We all had to use it to get here. And this is all in good spirit. I just found this quite remarkable that this was right in front of me. Since we are all familiar with this, you'll hear my screen reader. And forgive me, it's a little bit fast. I'm used to listening to it quite quick. And I slowed it down, and maybe it was still a little bit too fast. But Tony, if you wouldn't mind playing video 1, what you'll hear is me trying to get through to the first page.
Address and search bar. Let'send.com secure button. Join with lead gen. Connect with fellow lead gen buyers, sellers, and performance marketers. Be the first and last name star. Text field. Double tap to edit. Use the roller to access misspelled words. Job title star. Text field. Double tap to edit. Use the roller to access job title star. Text field. Job title star. Text field. Job title star. Text field. Double job title star. Text field. Job title star. Text. Let's join with lead gen community. Heading level 2. Join with lead gen community. Heading level 2. Join with lead gen community. Join with lead gen community. Heading level 2. Join with lead gen community. Join with lead gen community. Join with lead gen community. Heading level. Country star. Country star. Select back country. Back button. By submitting your information. Accessibility menu. Back button. Sign up. Back button. Country star. Select country star. Back button. Sign up for updates by submitting your information. Country star. Country. Star. Country. Phone number star. Text country. Country. Back button. Sign up for accessibility menu. Pop up button. Dialog pop up. Accessibility menu. Pop up button. 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 Dialog pop up. Join with lead gen community. Join with lead gen community. Heading level 2. Join with lead gen community. Join with lead gen community. Heading level 2. Join with lead gen. Address and search. Join with lead gen community. Heading level 2. Join with lead gen community. Join with lead gen community. Heading level 2.
So yeah, that's how someone with low vision would be trying to navigate a web page. And I found this really interesting because what you can see there is, I went to the web page and this overlay or this pop-up happens and it asked me, would you like to join the lead gen community? But of course I would. That's what we're here for. But I couldn't insert my information into the website of that pop-up because it wasn't working with my screen reader. It wasn't operable. And then what you're seeing further is me on the bottom left side trying to find the accessibility button that allows for what I would hope for screen readers to work a little bit better. And I couldn't click on that either. And then I tried to exit out on the top right and go back to the main page, and again, it wasn't allowing me to even exit that. So I was having a really difficult time, and this would be what we would consider a blocker. And this fundamentally is why I call the talk the almost limitless internet, because I have found throughout my life I can overcome almost anything with some gumption and some try hard. I've been able to make a quite astounding career in professional climbing, and yet here I am just trying to learn about the conference that I'm so excited to come to, and I'm stuck in my tracks, and there's no workaround. This is something that's not possible for me to get past without turning my screen reader off and going and asking my neighbor or my spouse for help. And that's quite possibly one of the biggest cruxes for people with disabilities is sometimes it's just not possible to go beyond these things. And this is what happens when something is not super understandable. So I think this is really interesting as well because this was a site bike manufacturer I used to work for in the biking industry, and I enlarged the text significantly just to try and make it easier for myself. And this is what happens when that text gets enlarged, quite profoundly, and it starts kind of meshing together, and it's impossible to see it. And so this fundamentally comes back to, is the website built to have the right series of codes? If you build it the right way, when you enlarge text, it'll expand the whole web page, and it's easy for people to see. Furthermore, it won't distort whenever you're trying to zoom in on something and get all pixelated and stuff like that. So I found this quite interesting, and they are deploying an accessibility widget, and we'll get into those later on as well. And so Let me make sure I'm on the right track here. So this is kind of what I wanted to talk about with these accessibility widgets and automated testing. So the Department of Justice does have some literature here, and it's quite interesting. I came here ready to talk about these proposed set of rules the Department of Justice was putting forth last year in August. They put forth a series of rules, and it was really expansive, like 50,000 pages. I've been studying it forever, trying to figure it out. And last night, before I went to bed, thinking about this conversation I was going to have with y'all, they signed it into law. So that's really interesting. And we want to acknowledge that you can do AI testing, you can do these auto scanners, and you can deploy widgets and things, overlays, stuff like this. But we're only going to pick up about 30% of it. And it's really interesting because I had a friend who was the head of a large company, and he was their accessibility officer, and so his job was overseeing stuff like this. And so he had an automated tool, an AI, that was telling him that he was scoring perfect on web content accessibility guidelines. And he was thinking, oh, this is great, it's all, it's all gravy. And then someone called him and was like, hey, you say you're accessible, but it doesn't work. And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about, but he didn't account it for that particular page, the end user being someone like myself, who's kind of this hybrid between low vision and completely blind. And so he worked with that individual, and they were able to recreate the problem, and they were able to move past it. But it just goes to show that we can only detect about 30% of issues with AI, because you can't tell a machine to be blind. At least not yet. We're getting there. I mean, eventually it's going to be the case. But it's quite fascinating. And then there's the overlay, or the widget, as you guys have heard me refer to. And that's quite interesting, because what happens is these companies will sell you compliance, right? They'll say, you need to be compliant to all these laws, and you need to be sure that people's information is secure and so on, and buy our overlay, buy our widget. And I think those do have their place. But again, if the website's not coded the right way, those overlays are not going to work very well with the website, because like we saw in the previous slide with Understandable, it just distorts everything. And so then you have a false insecurity, it creates bigger barriers. And I have another slide here with a video for Tony to play on number 2. And forgive me again if this is a little bit too fast, but what you're going to hear is
accessibility
me trying to interact with the overlay.
Says user-way accessibility toolbar settings. Enable the user-way screen reader. Toggle button. Not press. Double tap to toggle setting. Enable enhanced contrast. Toggle button. Not press. Double tap to toggle setting. Enable the user-way screen reader. Toggle check. User-way screen reader and close the accessibility menu. Accessibility profile. Highlight links. Enable user-way screen reader. Read pace. Fast. To read and pace. Slow. User-way screen reader. Disable. Close the accessibility menu. Choose the one extended. Close the accessibility menu. Close the
So this is another one of those moments where I think that the intention is there. They want to do the right thing, but in this particular case, I already had to use a screen reader to get here. And then I figured that, well, I got past the overlay, or the pop-up, and I'm here now. I want to see how it works with, can I make it better with my screen reader? And it just started speaking another one next to the one that I'm already using, and then I'm just like, this is really confusing. This is quite a mess. I don't know how to get past this. And so I just turned it off, and I don't use those things. They're kind of a false sense of security. And so, speaking of security, again, I want to make sure I'm at the right spot here. One of the big issues that we run into is with compliance, and that's a big deal. The Department of Justice realizes this. And so they say very clearly, well, if it's not accessible, it's not secure. And there's some big reasons for that. So we can go through and make sure that everything is compliant to CCPA laws and the GDPR and all these things. But then if you have somebody like myself who comes to the website, I'll give you an example. So I was applying or going to a new doctor. And I figured that I would save some time by going through their portal and putting all my medical history into that portal. And, well, it was not accessible. And so then I started trying to make sure, or doing it on my own, trying to be as independent as I possibly can. And, well, the text was very low contrast. It wasn't working with my screen reader. I couldn't copy and paste and put my information into the text fields and on and on. I finally get halfway through and it times me out. I'm just like, this is impossible. How am I supposed to get past this? And so now I'm going to someone, sometimes it's a complete stranger, and I'm like, can you help me put my information in here? And then I'm giving all that information to a complete stranger, someone that doesn't need to know my medical history. And so that's kind of some HIPAA issues for sure. And then another great friend of mine, he's completely blind, very well-known blind man. And he was trying to use his banking app, an app that he's used for a long time, but because web pages and things are dynamic, it updated. And after it updated, his screen reader stopped working with the login button, and now he's inserting his personal, or attempting to put his personal information in to log in, can't do it anymore. And so now he's going and talking to a friend and saying, well, why is this not working? And he said, well, the button's there, but you can't see it because your screen reader doesn't work there. And his only option was to give his banking details to someone who shouldn't need to know that, because this is banking information. This is a big deal, and it's violating all sorts of different privacy laws and his personal philosophy, of course. And so we want to make sure that accessibility is kind of a final QA or quality assurance. It's one of those things that we can be sure we're compliant to all these things, but if it's not accessible, it's not secure, and that's how the Department of Justice sees it as well. Right. And so we're at a marketing conference, and so this is quite interesting. I used to work at a really well-known bike company. That's where I pulled out that understandable slide from. The website was terrible. And I'm the blind guy, and I'm doing customer service, and I get about 70 phone calls a day on average. And I know everything about the bikes. I know everything about the website. Even though it's not accessible, I've learned the workarounds and loopholes, and it's overburdensome, sure, but I'm here to sell bikes. I love riding. And I, all the time, would get people calling me saying, your site's terrible, I can't use it, I'm gonna go to a bike shop. I'd have customers on the phone with 3 e-bikes in the car, and it would be like 50 grand or something like this. And they'd say, well, the payment's not going through, something's messed up, it's complicated, it's not working right, and they just hang up the phone, and I'll look at my boss, I'm like, I'm sorry, did I try to? I don't know. And so it's interesting because oftentimes, depending on how severe the website is, we'll have that funnel, right? And people will come to the site and they may get confused and they may be like, I don't even want to come here, I'll go somewhere else. Or sometimes, let's say it's good enough and they get all the way to the final stage and all of a sudden the payment method is too complicated. And then they're like, well, this is a pain. It's that friction that we're looking for, right? And so the more friction they hit, the more burdensome it becomes. And this happens all the time. I wouldn't do sales left and right, and I would even have people that were blind calling me. Of course, I thought I was the only blind bike rider, but apparently there's a lot more. And they would come and they would tell me it doesn't work, and I would have to help them through it. Sometimes I would get sales, sometimes I wouldn't. But in the beginning, you guys saw that 20% of our global population is using one or more assistive tool. And that's really interesting because here in America, that's 65 million people. And imagine how many more people you could market to, or what kind of pool you open up if you were able to market to 65 more million people. And it's a big deal because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and he owns a VW bus company. And they were saying that they don't market to people with blindness or to people that can't drive. I was like, well, fair enough. I can't drive. Or at least, I shouldn't tell people I drive. But I do find it interesting because what if I'm the person who's trying to set up a romantic getaway for my partner, or a getaway? I would then have to go to their website and it doesn't work, and I'm trying to be secretive and I'm getting frustrated, and sometimes I call and there's no accessibility statement, there's no understanding of how this works, and it leads me to not want to do business with that individual. And so I oftentimes go somewhere else because I'm like, well, that option is not viable, I'm going to go try and figure out something else. So I think often it's something that we just don't look at. And certainly something that we need to pay attention to when it comes to marketing to a bigger audience. And so this is the fun stuff, the stuff, the compliance part of things, and kind of the scary things. So in 2017, we see an uptick in lawsuits. And of course, it'd be about 800 there in the beginning, and then we see it jump quite a bit in 2018. It's pretty level there in 2018 and 19, but it continues to rise year over year over year. Now here we are or last year at least. In 2023, we see about over 4,600 lawsuits. And that's pretty interesting because 70% of those are federal level, about 30% are state, and the rest of them are all private. And 900 of those are companies that deployed overlays or widgets. Again, just kind of honing in the reality that this is a pretty big deal as far as creating more barriers and needing to make sure that the code is set up the right way. And so we also want to acknowledge that, this is something that affects everybody. So, there are real needs for people like myself that need to have this as a standard, and of course the government agrees, and this affects people like myself who are low vision, or people that are disabled in a myriad of ways, from being paralyzed, or maybe I have some friends that don't have hands and they can still climb. These people are incredible, and they use these little push straws, and that's how they navigate the web. But this also affects our parents or people that are not very tech savvy. If something's coded the right way and built well, it's going to function well for everybody, and it's going to be a very streamlined, frictionless ordeal, and it's going to be easy for people to navigate the web. We all know how difficult it is sometimes to use particular mobile apps, even if you're perfectly capable. And so when you build something to the right standard, it works well. And that's something really important because as our world increases in its digital space, about 200,000 websites get built a day. And that's overwhelming. And so it's just crazy to think that, accessibility for a lot of the times is not something that we talk about, but it affects so much of our lives, both in person and on the digital world. So we want to make sure that this is something that we're acknowledging here. And so I got through this pretty quick. So this is our company Perspective Tester. We test through a myriad of different ways. So we test through, we do some automated testing, kind of do some broad sweeps of things, but it always comes back to manual testing. And manual testing would be someone like myself who is blind or low vision, coming through it manually and trying to make sure that everything is working properly. And then we do a big test with people that are certified to do manual testing on a very high level, and that's really important as well. And so our company, Perspective Tester here, you can find us at p15r.com. This is my email address, Justin at p15r, and this QR code will take you to our site.